Welcome back to Bite-Size Endgames. In today's video, we're going to take a look at one of my favorite endgames of the year, played between Vladimir Fedoseev and Anton Korobov. In this position, White's clearly an exchange down, but he has some drawing chances due to the limited amount of material left on the board. As you can see, both sides only have one pawn each, and if the pawns are traded, then it's just a very easy draw, with king and bishop against king and rook. So the way I see it, White has two ways to try to hold this position. The first way is to wait passively, so he will try to put his king back on f2, put the bishop in f4, and just wait along this diagonal. The second way is to adopt a more active approach. So we'll put the king on e5, and we'll try to tie black's pieces down to the f5 pawn. Now in the game, Fedoseev chose the first option, which is the passive option, bishop c3. But here Korobov plays very well. He starts with an important check, rook f1. Now if the white king goes to e5, then rook f3 immediately wins either the pawn on g3 or the bishop. So white king had to step back, and now that the pawn on f5 is no longer under attack, black simply brings his king h5, king e2, and now another clever move, rook c1. So because the bishop is under attack, white doesn't have time for a move like king f3, which stops king g4. So after bishop e5, the black king does arrive on g4. And now all that's left is after king f2, rook c2 check, forcing the king back to the first rank. Because if you play king e3, I have rook g2, followed by rook takes g3, with a winning pawn ending. So the king has to go back to the first rank. But after king f3, well, white resigned here because there's no way to avoid the same idea. For instance, if white waits to the bishop, then rook g2 check, rook takes g3, and the pawn ending is just lost, just f4. And black wins. The pawn simply goes through. So, here the only way for white to hold this position is to try to go for the active approach. And to do this, we need to start with bishop e3. Now the difference is that after rook f1 check, we now play king e5. And after rook f3, we have to move bishop f4. So we are not losing material on the spot. In fact, we are keeping our material, and we're trying to ask black how he can make progress. Because if he plays a move like king h5, as he did in the game, then king takes f5 is just a draw. So he needs something a bit more clever than this. What he can try is to cut off the king along the e-file, which he most definitely can. He can play rook a3, put the rook back on the 8th rank, and I'll play rook e8 check. And this looks quite hopeless because the black king comes in to g4. But it really isn't that simple. King d5, king g4, now king d6. Black would love to bring his rook and sacrifice it for the bishop, for instance, with rook e4. But he'll never get a chance to do this. White plays bishop e5, and after rook e3, again threatening to take on g3, white is just in time with the move king e6. So if you take the pawn on g3, then f5 is going to hang at the end. So that doesn't work. And if black plays king g5, then we can just go back, as now the g3 pawn is no longer under attack. The fact is, black cannot really make progress here. We'll wait on one of these few squares, and there's not much black can do. So here black's best try is probably to go for the move king h5. And it seems that black's gonna just play king g4 and collect the pawn. For instance, the move bishop f4 is losing immediately because of Sukswang. King g4. And now, no matter what white does, black's gonna either take on f4 or take the pawn on g3. For instance, if white tries to move his king, then black easily wins the pawn ending. If white tries to wait with his bishop, this also fails because after king g4, bishop f4, black simply makes a waiting move with his rook, and white's again in the same Sukswang. So again, rook takes f4. So this seems like a hopeless situation. But here is where white uncocks his massive idea. His brilliant move, king f6. This move looks completely senseless because you're moving the king away from the pawn. But in fact, it's a stroke of absolute genius. After king g4, now we simply wait with the bishop, bishop d4. And after king takes g3, another amazing idea. And this is the key idea of white's whole concept. King g5. And black is completely unable to prevent the move bishop e5 check, followed by a move like bishop f4, picking up the pawn on f5. And as we already discussed, king and bishop against king and rook is a pretty easy draw. So if black moves his king away or moves his rook, let's say rook f3, then bishop e5 check and bishop f4. And next move we take on f5. And we can shake hands as an easy draw. So f4 seems like the only try. But here white pins the pawn with bishop e5. And now, if the black king moves away, white can take the pawn on f4. So let's say king g2, we can take on f4. If he waits with his rook, then we simply wait with our bishop. And the key is that the rook cannot really activate itself because white will take the pawn on f4. So really, this is a very nice positional draw. Even though black has a rook and pawn against white's lone bishop, a big material advantage, black has no way to activate these pieces without losing this pawn on f4. And so, white easily makes a draw by waiting with his bishop. It's a beautiful concept, almost study-like. So I hope you enjoyed this endgame, and if you'd like to see more of this, then make sure to like and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video.